All right. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. My name is Michael Rodriguez, and I'm the Managed Services Supervisor here at Continuity Centers. I've been here with Continuity for a little over 8 years, and the company has been providing services for over 25. Our company is the leading provider of backup and disaster recovery. We provide fully managed, instant recovery options, off-site data protection, and air-gapped ransomware protection. Our proven recovery solutions provide security for your data and the fastest recovery time objective available. I would also like to introduce to you Tim Hudson. Tim is Veeam's Senior Solutions Architect.
Thanks, Michael. As a Senior Solution Architect here at Veeam, my role is mainly to interact with our service providers like Continuity Centers, but occasionally I've got fun things to do, like talk to this audience about backup for Microsoft 365. I've been here at Veeam about 5 years, and I spend most of my time helping our service providers design, build, and run Veeam-powered services.
Okay, well, just a little housekeeping before we get started. Thank you, Tim. Today's webinar will be recorded, and all attendees will receive a copy of the recording and presentation. If you have questions, please use the Q&A or chat function. We will answer any questions that you might have at the end of the webinar. So our partnership with Veeam, the leading software in backup and recovery, offers you the best data protection capabilities that exist. Today, we will be diving into Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 version 6, why you need it, and the newest feature that has been added, which is the self-service portal. When you think about a software as a service provider such as Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, one of the most common misconceptions is it's the SaaS provider's responsibility for protecting your customer data. This is not true. Their responsibility ends with maintaining a highly available platform for you as a customer to consume. The responsibility of providing an adequate data protection solution to protect your data is entirely up to you as the customer. This is precisely why Veeam developed a backup solution for Microsoft 365 environments and why Continuity Centers uses the 3-2-1 rule to fully protect you, the client. The 3-2-1 rule is 3 copies of your data on 2 different media, with 1 copy being offsite. We employ this by having your production data in the cloud, a backup of that data locally to an appliance, and another copy of that data to a separate cloud on the opposite coast of where your backups reside. And now with the newly added feature, end users can conduct searches for emails, SharePoint, and OneDrive items that may have been deleted and restore them to their own production inboxes or OneDrive folders just by logging into the self-service portal using MFA. Now, while here at Continuity, we are a white glove service provider for all of your backup and recovery needs, and of course, we can do all of this for you, it's still nice to have the flexibility to be able to do your own quick restores as well. With ransomware and malicious attacks on the rise, knowing there are multiple options to get your data back online is the fastest way possible is comforting. If you get a chance, you should all take a look at a great video by a guy most of you have heard of, Kevin Mitnick, that shows you how ransomware can completely take over. It's interesting to say the least, but it's nice to know that Continuity Centers has your back. Tim?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, the pervasiveness of ransomware and those kinds of attacks is, it can be a little bit sickening, for us in the data protection industry or maybe even the audience. And what we've seen at Veeam is that over the past handful of years since we started, since we developed the backup for Microsoft 365 product, the user base of Microsoft 365 has grown massively. Perhaps that's due to COVID or just other realities with remote work in 2022. But with this growth, we've seen the growth of the Veeam product and the growth of things like Teams users, because organizations are recognizing that they need to protect data, that they need to recover from that, or hold this data for legal or search purposes for the future. So we've done some research. Let's go to the next slide and look at some of the reasons for why folks protect their data and eventually need these restores that are so critical. Certainly things like accidental deletion or ransomware attacks are, I think they're just really obvious reasons for why we need to protect data. You know, people make mistakes, and we know that there are malicious actors out there in the wild. But other things like potentially an internal issue where you've provided access, maybe on purpose or maybe accidentally, to certain users. With this additional level of access, you know, again, mistakes can happen, or malicious actors can interact with data. We also will speak today to the power of, or the need for search and protection for data based on legal requirements. For all of those backup situations, we've polled users and organizations to understand what kind of retention requirements do they have? What do we see out in the field? And I think this graphic is great to describe that. Of course, there's a few organizations, a small percentage, less than 10%, that tells us they don't really have any retention requirement today. That's not very common though. Much more likely, we see folks have something like 30 days at least, or up to something closer to multiple years, 3, 5, 7, or even a potentially forever retention requirement. When organizations have this data, when they have these types of retention requirements, we recognize that there's often a third-party software role to play in order to adhere to these retention requirements, because folks continuously tell us, like we saw in the last slide about reasons for backup or potential reasons to restore, a huge percentage of folks tell us that they think about those reasons and think about them in terms of retention requirements. So let's look at this next set of polling data for how folks respond to us when we ask them about deletion of data through malicious or internal threats.
Yeah, so I just wanted to speak to something really quick. Tim, you know, a lot of people don't realize too that the penalty for not having the required data is incredibly higher than the cost of actually, you know, storing that data. I mean, that's why we have the retention policies that range from 3 years to 7 years plus, all depending on legal or compliance requirements. You know, we can adjust to any retention necessary. So it almost makes more sense to just hold on to that data rather than to not have it and get penalized later on for it.
I totally agree. So you can see here, as we poll our user base or potential user base, a huge number of respondees, you'll confirm that they're afraid of accidental removal of data, or again, ransomware, cybersecurity issues. You know, those are clearly the, you know, the most commonly recognized things to protect against. And when we think about accidental deletion or malicious attacks, we're also going to recognize how users want to protect from these scenarios. So if on the one hand, you recognize that there's a need to protect their data, there's always multiple ways to you know, think about this protection. So let's look at the next slide, Mike, and let's think about how folks actually, you know, meet their retention requirements or their data protection requirements. What I like about this slide for the audience is that we're comparing over the past couple of years. Here we are getting into 2022. And we've seen as this rise of Office 365 use from 2020 till now has grown, we also are able to ask our users now, how do they protect their data? Do they use the built-in capabilities of Office 365? And you can see in 2020, a significant amount of folks, yes, they actively use the default capabilities for the Microsoft product. There's a recycle bin, for example. We also recognize that these built-in capabilities for Office 365 can be adjusted. So things like the default retention for recycle bin, or things like default retention for litigation hold, or adjust users inbox data, that can be adjusted. And it can be costly. So what we've seen on the Veeam side is that folks will leverage a third-party solution to better control where their data sits. When we think about a longer retention policy, on the one hand, it's great that Microsoft offers that, but on the other hand, in order to remove that from a potential attack through Microsoft, organizations leverage third-party products to bring this data back to their premises, potentially, or to a service provider's data center, where it can be stored safely and securely for long-term retention, and then restored as necessary. So you can see in the middle graphic that there's been quite a rise in folks using third-party solutions, Veeam or not, in order to protect their data. And what's important about that to me is that there's this industry-wide recognition of the need. And again, you can see very, very few folks don't actively protect their data. So we've really seen this rise of the use of the product, and in general, industry-wide, just being intelligent and mature about protecting critical data like that in Office 365. When we think about what specifically are we talking about when we think about this critical data, very, very specifically, what do we protect with the Veeam software stack today? It's Exchange mailboxes, archive mailboxes, both corporate and personal SharePoint data, OneDrive for business data, and most recently, Teams. This to Veeam gives us a comprehensive protection capability for the most critical Office 365 data. Having also done Teams in the past couple of versions shows that we are protecting more and more over time. And I believe you'll see us continue to go down that path as new solutions are available and new needs come up from our customer base. Our goal is always to be able to provide quick restore capabilities in very flexible scenarios. Now, we don't know here at Veeam every situation you're going to run into as a customer when you need to restore data. So it behooves us to offer many, many options. We'll show a great graphic here of the 45 different ways we have to restore data today. And Mike will demonstrate our latest capability set here shortly on the self-service portal, which we think gives even greater flexibility for end users to essentially work for themselves and restore some data if they understand it's been lost. We also will briefly touch on some security and compliance searching. When I think about flexible backups, I really love this slide because I'm going to take a second and make sure the audience understands for the software that Veeam provides, in almost all cases, we want that to be able to be deployed and run by our customer base, wherever they want, on-prem or in a public cloud. But we also, in almost all of our tool sets, provide a multi-tenant service provider capability. It's built in. It's the same software that our end users use. So if you're in the audience and you're considering the importance of backing up this data, again, I'll just remind you that There's options for you to deploy this yourself. However, we find that many organizations rely on service providers to manage either remotely or in a service provider facility that this data. And so, Mike, I'll just ask you to speak for a minute. What has been your experience so far with this product and running it as a multi-tenant service provider? What kind of deployment capabilities do you have in that regard, or how do you approach customer situations, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so Tim, like I love this slide, right? And the reason for it is like that middle part, right? That the service provider deployments, right? I love being a part of that group. Continuity Centers offers a complete white glove service, as I said earlier, right? So there's no overhead required from the clients, right? It's multi-tenant here at our data center. So you get the peace of mind knowing that we take care of everything, right? From planning and implementation to troubleshooting the backup errors and completing restores in a timely fashion. Just knowing that all of that is resting on somebody else's shoulders, and you can basically just sit back and reach out if you need us. That has to provide a high level of comfort for a lot of people.
Yeah, totally agree. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of where our solution is deployed or who's managing it, we felt it was important to show our audience that, or just remind you that different organizations' protection needs imply they're going to have different configurations. So for example, at Continuity Centers, they could create a backup job that covers your entire organization. Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. That could be one job. You just get it all done in one go around. But we do work with organizations that only need specific users, groups, or SharePoint sites backed up. And this is all able to be done in the product. And Continuity Centers is able to help build that scope appropriately for you so that it meets your needs without going beyond maybe what you're comfortable with today. So lots of options for inclusions and exclusions for different scenarios. And specifically, we just wanted to remind the group about some special oddities with Microsoft Teams. We use this here at Veeam. I love the tool. I know I've worked with Mike a bunch preparing for this webinar, for example, going over Teams and passing data back and forth. In the background, while it seems seamless to us, we're using a little bit of Exchange, we're using a little bit of SharePoint, and we're using a little bit of OneDrive. Now, Microsoft does a great job of obfuscating that for the user base, but the reality is that the data is stored separately in their backend solution. Now, none of that really matters for you as the audience, because if you're leveraging our product, we will effectively back up all of these item types or sub-items. It just shows this Teams data. When you go to restore, we will restore the data appropriately, quickly, and easily, so that when you go back to Teams, you essentially have that same representation, even though we've placed data in different locations back in the Office 365 solution. So Teams is great, adds a little bit of complexity because of the way the software is built, but that's basically all taken care of with Veeam and Continuity Centers protecting your data. Oh, Mike, I want to ask you to speak to RPO and RTO, because while Veeam offers some flexible options, I think you've got some standards or maybe just some common implementations you've seen.
Yeah. Okay. So at Continuity Centers, we have a standard way of backing up Exchange and 365 data, right? So we provide custom levels of RPOs as low as item level 15-minute intervals, right? So very quick very low RPOs, right? So we stretch it out. It could be from 15 minutes to stretching it out to once a day snapshots. And that will meet a client's desired RTO effectively. And then we range from the self-service portal to a complete help desk for more in-depth restores, which will help the recovery time objective, the RTOs, in order to get the client's data back in a very fast and effective manner.
All right, so we've got 2 slides when we think about those recovery scenarios. I thought they were both valuable. Mike did too, so we wanted to make sure we reviewed them with you. But we know that there's lots of options required for restore, like I said earlier, but we also know that we can't really predict what it is you need. So it's basically a requirement from Veeam that we offer numerous capabilities. So let's say, for example, you come to Continuity Centers and you say you had an employee leave and you've removed their Office 365 license. So when that happens, their Office 365 data is also removed. So it's gone, like recycle bin and everything. So you reach out to Continuity Centers and you say, hey, we need this user's data back, but we had removed that from Office 365. So we're going to our backup well. Now, perhaps it's OneDrive data that you need. And we're not going to give individual files back. We can, but maybe at scale, that's very, very tough. So what we can do is we can zip these files up and pass them along. We can zip them up and restore them to a different OneDrive folder. So maybe a leader of a group can go and get this data as a zip, unzip it to the appropriate place, and go and manage files individually. Or maybe you're looking at historical email data. Maybe you need to look at something from a few years ago in terms of your restore point. The view of my mailbox from 18 months ago. Well, for your leader to take that view away, they may want that on their local system. They may want to view this ad hoc. So in order to do that, we might export my whole mailbox as a PST file, hand that to a leader, they load the PST file, and they have that for posterity. They can search and dive through that and restore data like that. Again, we're going to show off some self-service options, so I think that rounds out a set of comprehensive options. Here's the previously mentioned set of 45 restoration capabilities, which I think is really valuable. When we started, we were in the 20s of version 1 of this product, and we've come a long way in the last handful of years, getting us to this point where we have both GUI capabilities, which Mike will show, and self-service, user-driven, web-based restore capabilities, which Mike will also show. So no matter whether we're talking about a mailbox, a calendar item, a SharePoint file, a whole SharePoint site, just a Teams, just a Teams file, or a whole team, we've got you covered in terms of restoring the data in time of need. The final comment from me is going to be about e-discovery. I see this very frequently in my role here at Veeam, working with service providers. I hear all the time where users will submit a help desk ticket commonly to the service provider, and they'll ask, I'm looking for some data that is like this, data from this group, data that has attachments in this user's mailbox, data that was sent between this time and that time. All of this is available to be searched for through our tool or through the self-service portal. So depending on exactly the situation, exactly when you need it from, in terms of your historical restore point, there's an option that's going to meet the needs. It's either going to be able to be driven through the team at Continuity Centers or by the user themselves, which again, we just think is incredibly comprehensive and provides the capabilities that that our user base needs. All right, Mike, I think it's demo time. Are you ready?
I like hearing that, of course. Yes, absolutely. All right, so let me see if I can get my lab pulled up. Make sure you can see that, Tim, yeah?
Yep, looks great.
All right, so this is obviously my lab, and we'll do a quick demonstration of the self-service portal. So here, what you see is the console and what the console looks like for the back-end engineers here at Continuity Centers, right? But brand new with version 6, we have a self-service portal. Having this new tool will relieve the user from having to contact support for a simple in-place restores of Exchange, OneDrive, and SharePoint. Now, as I said earlier, you can always ask for our assistance, which just makes your day just a little bit easier. So let's take a quick look at it. Okay, so once we enter the URL that we provide, in this case, it's restoreportal.continuitycenters.com, right? We're going to take this, and what we'll do is we'll pick a user. I know of a user that's here, Mr. Chong. Okay. Now,
To the audience, that when you're logging in here as your user, you're not passing Veeam or Continuity Centers your login information. Is that correct?
that is very correct, yes. So what happens here, it prompts you to do Microsoft 365 credentials, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the password in for this user here. Okay. I do have MFA enabled. Okay. Just wait for that to come in.
Okay, so you're essentially logging in as the user to the user's environment, and because your organization has forced MFA, you have to supply your code to log in here. Okay, I've got it.
So I'm going to provide that code that I just got to my Authenticator app. We'll verify, make sure that we can get in here.
Now we've been redirected back to the Continuity Centers Restore portal.
Exactly, yes, yes. So now that we're back at the Restore portal, okay, now before I actually move on, there is one thing I did want to say about what you just brought up with the MFA and stuff. A lot of people had concerns in the beginning of hearing about self-service portal. And you know, whether you were passing those credentials, as you said, whether they were being passed to Veeam or passed to Continuity Centers, and because using the MFA and using Microsoft 365's MFA, there is no data exfiltration. There is nothing that is passed other than to go from the MFA back to the Restore portal. So all of that is handled within Microsoft. So your data is safe, your passwords and usernames are all safe as well. So as you can see here, the console opens straight up to a tree containing Mr. Chong's data. Okay, and if we drill down into the first item, we can see his Exchange data, his mailbox. Okay, we see the folder structure as it stands the last time it was backed up. It's a copy of his Outlook with all the normal folders you would see, like calendar, inbox, sent items. I mean, you get the idea. So let's take a quick peek at Tommy's actual Outlook for a second. I have taken the liberty of logging in myself, okay, to Mr. Chong's mailbox. And we can see his live email here. Now let's just say the end user accidentally deleted this most important email here from his good friend, Mr. Marin. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and delete that, gone, okay? And in the deleted items folder, we're actually going to completely remove it. This way we know it is gone, right? Done, see ya. Okay, so now what we do is we simply provide Mr. Chong with that URL that we said before, that we're still logged in from earlier. And then we can run a search on the Outlook. And let's just say it's from, you know, Mr. Marin inside of his mailbox here. Right, and bang, there you go, right? So there it is. Now, you can do a search here. I just wanted to note also, you can, if you know where the email sits, you can also search it from here as well, okay? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna run this restore. It's just that. Click on that email there. Click on restore. This is telling you the items that are going to be restored. Click next. And here, this is important because I wanted you to note that restoring to the original location is back to the user's inbox in their Exchange. Restoring to a new location, I just want to say and emphasize this, it does not let you restore to another mailbox. This is just another folder location on that user's mailbox. Okay, so again, no fear of exfiltration when the end user is using this. They can only go back to their own mailbox. And then the reason, we're just going to put deleted, right? Specify the reason. Take a look at our summary. Make sure all of these are correct. And then we're just going to click on finish. We'll head on over back to our inbox. I'm going to take a look and see what's going on here. And there you have it, right? So just like that, restore's complete. Restored it with the time and date stamp of the original day, as you can see there, 3/16, that it was received, since the metadata was backed up with it as well. Also, if it was in a subfolder, it would have restored right back to that as well. So now if we go back to the portal, you'll see the restore session and its corresponding log. This screen is important to me, and it should be important to everyone because there's an audit trail for anyone that has run a restore of any type of data. So not only can the user see this, right, but you as an engineer or a back-end user can see all of the logs as well. And if you went back to our Explore screen, the same would be for OneDrive and SharePoint data as well. So Mr. Chong's data, he can see here. Also, if Mr. Chong, let's say, was responsible for a team or another user or any such thing as that, you see this little thing here says restore operator, right? Okay. We can be very specific as to what the restore operator sees from users to groups. And even if you had, let's say, a SharePoint site admin, we can tune their access to see their own data, which is by default, or whichever SharePoint sites that you would like them to see. Okay.
A really incredible capability set there, Mike. I think you demonstrated it well, that it's easy for users to perform that action themselves, and they just log in with their Office 365 credentials like they normally would. They'll be able to leverage multi-factor authentication if that's part of your organization's policies. It's great to see. It really is. Just a fantastic demo. Thanks a lot there. I think at this point we're gonna review a couple of questions, I believe. Let's see what we have out there.
Okay, let's take a quick look and see if there's any questions in our chat. I do see one here. It has to do with modern authentication and if it's supported, Tim.
Yeah, so we mentioned that a few times. In the product itself, of course, we support modern authentication. That is the latest capability from Microsoft. In fact, here soon, they'll be forcing all Office 365 organizations to leverage modern authentication. So totally supported from Veeam. A wealth of capabilities there. It's how we adhere to these modern security principles, like we displayed in the self-service portal, interacting with Office 365 itself, and being integrated with MFA there.
Okay.
Mike, I got one more here for me. What about litigation hold or hold options through Microsoft 365? How do you approach that or think about that? Yeah,
I'll take that one. So yeah, right. So we do support litigation hold items, but we've also done our own research in dealing with all of the clients. Most of them like the approach that we take with litigation hold items, which is to download a PST of the user or users mailbox as the data looked on the specific day. This way it could be held indefinitely, right? So there's no longer a cost that would be associated with the user's mailbox, especially if it's being hosted in the cloud. If we were to give you that PST, you hold on to it for however long you need it, indefinite, as I said, and that's the best way that we've found, and we found our clients like that way as well, to go about litigation hold items.
Yeah, cool approach there. I mean, it's good that you recognize, Veeam's built-in capability to protect items that organizations have put into litigation hold. But I think you've got something really unique there in terms of researching the most cost-effective way to protect that data. Really good point there.
Yep, and I see one more question, and let's see. Okay. Can I use Veeam Backup from Microsoft 365 for hybrid deployments between Exchange or SharePoint on-prem and Microsoft 365? Okay, so I'm gonna that's a pretty simple answer. Yes, right? The answer is yes. Veeam Backup from Microsoft 365 provides protection for hybrid email and SharePoint deployments, right? And the fun part about that is it also provides the ability to migrate that data between Exchange on-prem and Office 365. So if you're in a transition period and you've got an on-prem that you're going to a Microsoft 365, shortly, whenever in the future, you can migrate directly from one to the other using Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365.
Yeah, that's a cool capability. Neat.
Absolutely. Okay, I don't see any more questions, Tim. So it looks like we've come to the end of our webinar.
Mike, I'll start. Thanks for having me today to the Continuity Center's team. Thanks to you, Mike, for working with me on the presentation. And thanks to the audience for attending today. We appreciate your time. We know it's valuable. And I certainly hope you have a great rest of your week. Mike?
Yes, and I want to say thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Tim, for hosting with me. And I want to say the same thing. Everybody have a great rest of your week, and we appreciate you coming. Thank you.